We'd like to thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park, the championship meet, running now through Florida Derby weekend, March 31st.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Sunday morning. I am Seth Merrow. As usual on a Sunday morning, we'll do some stakes recaps. Part of that stakes recap, they had a nice day at Laurel yesterday, and we'll be joined by our friend Fran Vespe. He always does a great job catching up with the connections and whatnot of winners at Laurel and giving us some good color on some of their results. And they had General George, Barbara Fritchie, a couple other stakes there. So we'll have Frank Vespe in a little while to take a look at those Laurel stakes. I'm going to kick things off at Fair Grounds and Aqueduct with nice stakes action yesterday. And then towards the end of the program, we'll be joined by Matt Dinerman, the Oaklawn Park announcer. And I've had it in the back of my mind, get Matt the entire season, but I wanted him to get into it a little bit, to hear a little bit about his first season down at Oaklawn, and maybe we'll take a look at some of the action at Oaklawn for this afternoon and more. So all of that coming up. Let me first alert you to some of the things to be aware of today. There's a mandatory payout in the Pick Six at Golden Gate, according to the Racing Form. So if you're a Pick Six player and you like those mandatories, Golden Gate this afternoon, take a look at that. Kentucky Derby Future Pool is going this weekend. That'll close at 6 o'clock. I was just looking after yesterday's results. Interesting. Sierra Leone, 5-1 as the favorite at this point, and pretty substantially. Even with all others, who at 5-1 I think looks okay. Even at this stage, I think all others at 5-1 is attractive. Track Phantom 21-1, Locked 16-1, Knightsbridge Belmont Runner 19-1, 15-1 on Fierceness, 12-1 on Door Knock. So they're your shortest prices, but as I say, the only one in single digits after yesterday, and we'll look at it, Sierra Leone at 5-1. So again, Kentucky Derby Future Pool closes at 6 o'clock this evening. And also this evening, the Sunland Park Derby, Grade 3 event, $400,000. Looks like a fun little field, so keep that in mind for later. They also have the Sunland Oaks, some other stakes on their card. The Sunland Park Derby, though. Curlin's Chaos looks interesting, coming in from Southern California. Lucky Jeremy, a Bill Morey runner who came over to Sunland and won a stake leading into this to get a little try over the track. Stronghold for Phil D'Amato comes in from Southern California. And, of course, Steve Asmussen with a runner, Informed Patriot, who looks like a player coming out of a third in the Smarty Jones over at Oaklawn. Sunland Park Oaks, field of 6 in there, and that looks interesting. Winchell Thoroughbreds and Asmussen have Recharge, who comes in with a 2-for-2 record. So again, that's a little bit later today. Mandatory Pick 6 at Golden Gate. Kentucky Derby Future Wager closes at 6, and Sunland Derby and Oaks also on the agenda for today. So keep that in mind. All right, let's get to it, because big show here, and lots of stakes action from yesterday to take a look at. And we will jump in. Let me just grab a little info here. We'll jump in with, obviously the highlight yesterday was that card at Fair Grounds, and the highlight on that card was, of course, the Risen Star. So let's start with that. I took a little pop in here with Hall of Fame. And I tell you what, around the turn, I thought number 7, Hall of Fame, might live up to, as I said yesterday, you pay over $1 million and you name a horse Hall of Fame, you've got some high hopes, and seemed to indicate that could be the case with the Maiden Breaker in the second career start. This obviously became a little saltier, but Hall of Fame seemed to make a move on the turn, and I think was gonna be a little bit interesting. And then at 7-2 could not sustain. Hall of Fame again is kind of on the outside there and will fade a little bit, but coming up late as the 5-2 favorite, a little surprise there. Sierra Leone for Chad Brown under Tyler Gaffleone is going to wind up winning the number 4 horse, Track Phantom, who had been so good on the early Fairgrounds Trail. The number 11 winds up second. Catching Freedom winds up third in there. But as you saw, by half a length, it was Sierra Leone. Chad Brown, Magnier Tabor. Again, same connections with Hall of Fame, but Sierra Leone had a little bit more experience, having just gotten beaten last fall in the Remsen. Was on the sidelines, went way to the back in that Remsen and really had to run. So after yesterday's race, Chad was experimenting with blinkers and whatnot to get the horse a little more into the race. Tyler Gaffleone said the blinkers that were chosen seemed to work out okay. This Sierra Leone was a $2.3 million purchase right up the Northway, facing Tipton August of 2022. And again, career debut winner at Aqueduct last November. Then in December, just misses behind Dornoch in the Remsen, which is turning out to be a nice little race, it seems like, and follows it up in the 3-year-old debut. I haven't seen a number yet. Going to be interested to see, although with the track yesterday. And it was interesting. I read one of the articles. It really didn't rain after about 9 o'clock, according to what I read. But it was just the weather was such that the track never dried out, stayed. As you could see, that last race was run in the dark. After 6 their time, it was after 7 our time. They had a full day, but the track just never came around. Again, it was, one of those where you don't get sun or a breeze or anything. So off going, as they say, that may play into the number. Interesting also in the article, Chad Brown, more of an East Coast-based guy, a little Florida in the wintertime, and obviously New York in the summer. He's been racing in Kentucky a little bit more and more. But according to the article I read, it was only the second Fairgrounds win for Chad Brown, so that was a little bit intriguing. But nice win. This Fairgrounds trail has been productive in the Kentucky Derby. It seemed like the follow-up article I read, next up, not the Louisiana Derby, but maybe more likely the Bluegrass for Sierra Leone. We'll see what Track Phantom moves towards. And I'm going to be interested to see Hall of Fame. I do think that's a talented runner. And as I say, around the turn, I thought, but that's a salty spot for the first start after the Maiden Breaker. So we'll see what happens with Track Phantom. With Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame wound up 7th in the field. Again, made a nice move on the turn and looked like, going to be a player here. And then just faded a little bit late. But a nice performance. Career start number 3 from the winner, Sierra Leone. So, and as I say, nice enough that the future pool wagerers made Sierra Leone the 5-1 single choice favorite there, single entry favorite, along with a 5-1 on all others as well. But 5-1 in February seems a little slim in the future pool. And again, with the big 20-horse field, you wonder how much of an advantage that would give you going into the first Saturday in May anyway. We'll see. Like I say, for me, the future pool, you definitely want more value than that. Also on the card yesterday, Rachel Alexandra, the risen star for the 3-year-old boys, the Rachel Alexandra for the 3-year-old girls. We had Brendan Walsh on yesterday talking about Intricate making her 3-year-old debut. I thought she ran well. Intricate went off as the 8-5 favorite. Intricate's going to be the number 4 horse and get up to be a pretty clear second. But Tarifa got the jump under Flavian Prat for Brad Cox and Godolphin, and Tarifa is going to get it done. But again, you can see on the outside there, Intricate makes it a late run. It's just strategically got the chasing role behind Tarifa, who made the first move between those two. Tarifa, certainly talented, came in with 3 starts and a couple of wins, a maiden breaker and an optional claiming win, and then steps into Stakes Company yesterday and gets it done. So she's a 3-year-old filly to watch. But again, in the 3-year-old debut, and from talking to Brendan, if you listened to the show yesterday, I would guess he probably comes out of that satisfied. You know, the first start of the 3-year-old season, added some points to the total, which I would think would be enough to guarantee gets into the Kentucky Oaks. Another start certainly likely for Intricate and builds on this first start. So I'm sure he was satisfied with what he saw, and certainly the folks for Tarifa were very satisfied with her stakes debut, and I think both of those, as I say, worth watching going forward on the 3-year-old filly side of things. Also, stakes action yesterday on the grass. Again, they had a couple of races yesterday taken off the grass, a couple of races that stayed on the grass later in the day. This was one of them. The turf was labeled as soft. I liked Beatbox in here for Cherie DeVoe. Beatbox goes off at 9-2 and just gets up. Beatbox is going to be the number 10 horse. Strong Quality is the number 3. They had finished 1-2 in the Colonel Bradley last time out, with Strong Quality getting the best of Beatbox. But again, number 10 Beatbox over number 3 Strong Quality switches up the result by a neck yesterday. Johnny's Fireball is the number 1, who you can see here has the lead for a moment. That was the Joe Christofek partnership, Brilliant Racing. Like I said, I had Beatbox, but I was kind of rooting for Joe's horse because I always like to root for friends of the show and whatnot. And it was a nice performance from Johnny's Fireball, who again is owned in part by Joe Christofek's Brilliant Racing partnership, trained by Norm Cassie. But it was Cherie DeVoe, Joel Rosario, and Beatbox getting it done, switching those results on Strong Quality from last time. Good performance by both of them, by all 3 of them. Chart margins a neck and a neck. First to second, second to third. So Beatbox, Strong Quality, Johnny's Fireball all ran very well. But as I say, I like Beatbox and very happy to get the $11 and change there as we went up a tick from the morning line even. So nice performance in the Fairgrounds Stakes and the self-named. That was the Fairgrounds Stakes at the Fairgrounds. Also on the card yesterday, it was the Mine Shaft for the older runners. I was taking a little shot in here with Smile Happy and knew I was rolling the dice a little bit off of the last couple of performances. But Smile Happy, the Ken McPeak horse, last May had run so well in the Ali Sheba at Churchill with a 110 buyer. And I used Smile Happy last time and just clunked in the Louisiana back in January. But I wanted to take another shot, thought we'd get a little more value. We did. Smile Happy went off at 5-1. But Smile Happy, the number 9 horse, never really threatens and winds up running 5th yesterday. The winner is going to be number 7, Money Supply. They were cross-entered in another stake on the card. They were cross-entered in that Fairgrounds on the turf. But I wondered if they would elect there if it was off the turf. But because I'm sure they wanted to run on the dirt, and they got it here. And so Money Supply is going to get it done. Chart margin is going to be a neck over Best Actor, who was coming in for Brad Cox, Gary, and Mary West off a couple of nice wins to end the season last year, and had shown plenty of promise. And again, with a neck victory, both of these horses kind of stamped themselves as interesting players this year in that older division. Money Supply comes in with a 4-race win streak, had won 5 of the last 6, but stakes debut yesterday and gets it done for trainer Joe Sharp, Tyler Gaffleone on board. But again, in the seasonal debut as a 5-year-old, Best Actor looked pretty good also. Pretty lightly raced for a 5-year-old. Best Actor, that was only the 10th career start. So as I say, I thought both of those ran well enough to pay a little attention to. Gasoline 3rd, Red Route 1 4th in there. The Albert Stahl Memorial, another one that stuck on the grass yesterday. It's going to be, horse I had down at the bottom of my mix, but a fun result. It's going to be number 5, Spirit and Glory, getting it done. 3-1 over Trying My Heart Out at 23-1, the 2-horse, and Watch This Birdie, the 1, runs 3rd. Creative Cairo, the 5-2 favorite, the 3-horse, runs 4th in here. But again, kind of a fun result with the number 5, Spirit and Glory, Flavian Prat on board, because it's Rob Falcone, New York-based guy. Brought this one over from Palmettos to take a little pop in the stake at the fairgrounds, and gets it done in the Al Stall, Spirit and Glory, paying $8, took a little bit of action, and this was one of those horses. Rob Falcone was kind of slow up at Saratoga last summer, eventually got a couple of wins, got some wins towards the end of the meet. I said, I think I brought him luck, because it was towards the end of the meet. I was walking over to the front side one day from our trailer, and he stopped by and gave me a ride. And I think it was the same day he might have gotten one of his first winners at the meet. It was towards the end, though. But he had a good meet down in Monmouth in the summer, and this was one of those horses. Had won early in the summer down at Monmouth in a stakes race. The last start, they had shipped out to Del Mar, last start of the season last year in August, and ran a close-up second in the yellow ribbon. So it was coming back from a pretty good layoff. That was a nice performance off an August layoff. But Rob Falcone with a nice little turf runner on the female side of things. Spirit and Glory getting it done yesterday. And finally, the Colonel Power. This one was off the turf, the lone stake taken off the turf. But I said I was sticking with my pick, turf or dirt. Just Might, really fun horse. Just Might, a millionaire, and part of it's earned sprinting on the dirt, and part of it earned sprinting on the turf. Sasua Summer, who had won the Kenner on the turf, was likely the horse that was going to make it exciting with Just Might on the turf, but Sasua Summer, the Bill Mott horse, scratched with the surface change. Just Might stays in. Just Might's the number 4 horse. Went off as the second choice. The betting public got it right. Minnesota Ready for Tommy Amos, coming out of a close-up third, was right in the mix in that Kenner with Sasua Summer and Just Might. But on the move to the dirt, and there was some dirt for him underneath. I had Minnesota Ready in my mix on dirt. But Minnesota Ready, number 3 here, getting Just Might. And you saw as they came into the stretch, Just Might had the lead. But you could see Minnesota Ready was getting the momentum. And sure enough, the momentum moves Just Might forward. Or moves Minnesota Ready just forward to win. Chart margin winds up to be 3.5. Just Might is well clear of the third place horse, though. So, again, another nice run from the millionaire Just Might. But Minnesota Ready proved a little bit better yesterday, and appreciated, obviously, the surface switch. And again, the betting public got it right there. $4.60 as the 6-5 favorite, whereas Just Might was 9-5. I was a little bit surprised by that, but the betting public nails it. All right, also yesterday at Aqueduct, we had a couple of stakes races. The Broadway. I like Majestic Return in here, and I didn't get anything out of that one, running 6th in the field of 7. But in my mix was Security Code. Security Code runs really well. This is a gutsy performance, and Venti Valentine ran well also. Venti Valentine who had that really nice 2-year-old season and hasn't quite lived up to it subsequently, has run well in spots, and overall is always competitive. But Venti Valentine, the 5-horse, just winds up a little short yesterday as security code, as they say. Jose Castellano, Phil Serpi gets it done. Security code, the number 7 horse, and you can see they're both pushing by here. The number 6, Can't Hurry Love, and it gets to be a neck. I don't know whether you ever worried as the momentum was kind of carrying security code to the victory at $13 and change, but Venti Valentine did make it close, as I say, winds up to be a neck. So nice little addition of the Broadway, and a little bit earlier on the card, it was the Ruthless. And this one's worth watching because this may be a horse to watch going forward a little bit. Is this a horse we'll see in the test? I don't know, but it's a nice little 3-year-old filly sprinter. Helena's Forte in the Ruthless yesterday, the number 4 horse, goes off as the 2-1 favorite. She came in for Phil Bauer, won the debut nicely, then tried a stakes race last November at Churchill, ran second, and then went down to the Fair Grounds to end the season running second in a stakes race. And Phil Bauer elects to send her up from training down at Churchill training track most recently. And it was a great decision as Helena's Forte, now 4 starts, couple of wins, couple of second place finishes, including a nice win yesterday, daylight win, length and 3/4. Gallia Princess for Brad Cox in only her second career start. She may be worth watching going forward too, because again, lightly raced, so a couple of runners there that, but Helena's Forte, as they say, I didn't see a number yet, so I'm not sure, but it was a nice enough performance to think, as I say, this will be a 3-year-old sprinting filly to watch going forward. And I didn't see any follow-up on what might be next, but it wouldn't be a shock to see potentially test in the summertime, but that's far enough away, and she's still a little bit undefined enough to know whether that will wind up happening, but she'll be worth watching going forward one way or the other. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will be joined by our friend Fran Vespe. We'll take a look at some of that Laurel action from yesterday, General George, Barbara Fritchie, and more. All of that when Racing Across America continues. Stay tuned.
And they're off in the Pegasus World Cup. They're off in the Fountain of Youth Stakes. And they're off in the Curlin Florida Derby. Forte wins. White Aborio almost home.
And Nyquist is still unbeaten. Orb and John Velasquez have won the Florida Derby.
Laurel wins.
And there you have it. Northern Dancer will be the winner of the Florida Derby.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resorts Schenectady, where the good times flow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Sunday morning. Again, I always like to take a look at some of the nice stakes action from yesterday. Certainly that big day at Fair Grounds was worth taking a look at, but it was a big day down in Maryland where really throughout the winter they have a lot of nice stakes days, and yesterday was one of them. Barbara Fritchie is always one of the highlights on the Maryland calendar, so who better to go through some of the Maryland action with our friend Fran Vespe from the RacingBiz.com. Frank, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. Good to join you today.
Yeah, and yesterday we had John Piasek on, and I know he did selections for the RacingBiz.com, and we went over some of the stakes action with him yesterday. And as I say, Barbara Fritchie, I think that's fair to say. Barbara Fritchie, one of the highlights on the calendar down in Maryland for the whole year, right?
Yeah, I mean, this day is kind of the winter highlight for Maryland because we've got the Fritchie and the General George on the same day now, and those are the two graded races we have up until Preakness time. So.
All right, let's jump in because the General George, we mentioned it yesterday, and I said it was kind of one of those races where it maybe you're not going to make a lot of money betting, but it'll just be fun to watch. Post time for Brittany Russell. Came into yesterday, 6 wins and 7 career starts. I said, though, I thought Nimitz class didn't run well in the Pegasus for George Weaver, but they elected to return to Maryland, where Nimitz class has run well before. I thought might add a little juice and make it a little bit more fun than it turned out necessarily vis-a-vis a Nimitz class, but living up to the hype and the 30 cent to the dollar odds. We'll watch the stretch run here. It is number 3 post time. Brittany Russell with her husband Sheldon on board. Running second is 7's 11. Tenebris, the 7, runs third. Nimitz class disappoints a little bit as the second choice at 4-1, running fourth. But boy, post time. And John yesterday said maybe look for this one coming up Met Mile or whatnot. I don't know if that's going to be the game plan or not, but certainly with a 7-for-8 record, they have to step out of the comfort zone at some point, you would think. But give us your thoughts yesterday, General George and post time.
Well, it's important to understand, John, I think, is president of the Post Time fan club. He just loves this horse. And, obviously it was a big day for Brittany and Sheldon. They won this race. They also won the Fritchie, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think you're exactly right. This is a horse. He's done what he can do locally. They're going to have to go hunting bigger fish with him, to mix some metaphors there. Talking with Brittany and Mrs. Charles, who owns the horse afterwards, we're playing it coy, but they're certainly going to look at some of the bigger races that are coming up. And with the way this race developed, 7's 11 gets away with a very slow pace for the distance. They go 23-4 for the opening quarter, and post time still just runs right past them, no problem. And 7's 11, he's a real racehorse. He's not, he's not really a graded stakes animal, but he's a legitimate horse, and so pretty impressive effort from post time. I think, hopefully they can keep them together. Hopefully they can get them where they want to get them. And I think you'd have to start looking at some bigger races. So I'll be excited to see where they turn up to next.
Yeah, again, it was just fun to watch. Like I say, you're not making a lot of money at $2.60, but it's always fun to see performances like that and hope that it bodes well for going forward. But I'm also looking, picked this horse up at auction for $85,000, and yesterday over $300,000 now in earnings. So pretty good auction purchase.
Yeah, and I'd say, Mrs. Charles, who's Hillwood Stable, has just put a huge amount of money into this game. And she's had a couple of pretty nice horses. She had Cordmaker, who made $1 million. She had Bandbox, who won the General George. It's nice to see her rewarded for how much she stood by the game, including some, fairly lean years. And talking to her afterwards, she kind of got this sort of conspiratorial tone in her voice, and she said, well, I had our wonderful cord maker, and I had Bandbox. This one might be the best one. So I'm happy to see her getting a chance at doing something pretty cool with this horse. I think they're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch that one going forward. And John Piasek will be, working for the Maryland Breeders. As a Maryland bred, of course he's head of the fan club.
He definitely is. It's very funny.
Yeah, they might ban him from work if he wasn't. All right, let's go and take a look at the Barbara Fritchie Grade 3 event a little earlier on the card. For the ladies going $200,000 up for grabs. And when we were talking yesterday, I mentioned Apple Picker coming out of a couple of stakes tries, pretty good stakes tries for Brittany Russell, who, when she kind of made her name on the scene, started attracting some of these type of owners. Apple Picker in the yellow and pink for Mike Dubb. Brittany Russell also has some Mike Rapoli runners now, so it's just interesting to see how she has progressed. And Apple Picker will get it done at 5-1. Escapes a little bit of a price. Again, it's Brittany and Sheldon Russell and Mike Dubb. Apple Picker, the 5 wins. Last Leaf, the 1 runs second at a long price. Prodigy Doll, who I said yesterday, and I had him circled, and I talked about this one with John. I said, at a price off of that win, I think Prodigy Doll is a little bit interesting and does complete the try at 23-1. Blufeld, who was the 4-5 favorite, the 7 runs disappointing 5th in here, but a nice win by Apple Picker for Brittany and Michael Dubb.
Yeah, that's a good pickup, by the way, on Prodigy Doll. You know, I had talked with Phil Schoenthal, the trainer, about this horse, and when they brought her back in December, he basically said that's on me. That horse was short. She wasn't ready for that. I thought she was, and she wasn't. So that's on me. Then she came back and thrashed an allowance field, and didn't get a good buyer, but that buyer might be light for that race. She dominated that race. It's a 3 other than field. Probably should get higher than a 71, and then kind of validated that this was a little bit better effort by rallying in the 3rd here. Apple Picker, interesting thing about her, I was talking to Brittany afterwards, you get a lot of chances to talk to Brittany if you cover Maryland racing, because she finds her way to the winner's circle a lot, and you rarely get 5-1 as you did here. But this race she said this race became their target race in September when she won the Weather Vane at Pimlico. So they've really been pointing here ever since. And so, obviously they're very gratified to get here and then have her run like that. I thought it was a really good ride by Sheldon. And they really benefited. I thought Disco Ebo would be loose here, maybe a length or 2 clear. I don't know why they sent Beneath the Stars quite so aggressively to press her all the way. Beneath the Stars ends up last, and Disco Ebo, I kind of think, runs a sneaky good race to hang on the 4th here. But obviously, if you're Brittany and Sheldon, you'll certainly be happy to pick up those pieces.
And that when you're looking for a horse in a pace scenario, and all of a sudden some horse comes up and really challenges it. Now, Beneath the Stars was only 13-1, but a lot of times you see the horse come up on the outside and challenge the horse. You think, oh, this one's going to go out and get a nice easy lead, and you look up and you've got some 50-1 shot, and it's like, and then they finish last like that. Luckily, I'm not in the jocks room after those races.
I totally hear you, because I was on Disco Ebo in this spot. I thought there's a little value there. Didn't really love Bluefield, and so I thought, she'll get out, she'll control, and she won't come back. And then all of a sudden, they went 22.83 for the opening quarter. That's a full second faster than the General George went for the opening quarter. So they were cooking through those early fractions, and so I think Disco Ebo actually. Sneaky good effort, one to watch next time out if she turns up, which I suspect she will, in a spot where she really fits.
And always interesting to hear, I like the nuts and bolts that they had this race in mind going back that far, going back, 4 races. They were already looking for that. And when it all works out, that's very good. Good for them. Also on the card yesterday, the Nellie Morse, 1 1/16. We're going to watch the stretch run here. It'll be number 3, Charming Way for Jamie Ness. And when we talked yesterday, this was certainly one of the players. Again, I thought there was another one that I found interesting. New Hire at 20-1 coming off a win at Penn National. I said that might be an interesting long shot. Well, once again, my long shot completes the try. but the betting public was a little craftier in here. Went down to 6-1, so it wasn't quite as lucrative as the long shot in that follow-up race. But Charming Way gets it done for Jamie Ness. 2-1 is the second choice. Hybrid Eclipse, the number 7 horse, went off at 6-5. No surprise, Brittany Russell coming in with some nice stakes performances. But Brittany Russell, runner in this one, disappoints a little bit at 6-5, running 4th. But as I say, the Jamie Ness runner gets it done. Charming Way in the Nellie Morse.
Yeah, this is a mare. She's by Blofeld. She's the Maryland bred, and she has always shown some talent. She. I remember her debut. I think she ran second and ran really well, and took her a couple more starts to graduate, and then won the Maryland bred allowance. Like, it's always shown a little bit of talent, but hadn't quite gone on. And then Jamie Ness claimed the horse about 4 or 5 races ago, and all she's been doing since is running good races, and comes in here, just gets a dream trip. You've got #Lucky who leads for a half mile and pretty much completely stops, and Charming Way just goes on and wins easily. This is a nice effort. I'm curious to see where they're going to spot her next. I mean, it's not a great field here. I mean, Hybrid Eclipse is a favorite. She's fine, but she's nothing too special, and so it'd be interesting to see where they go with her. But clearly, Ness is getting a lot out of her now. She's really kind of delivering on the promise she showed as a young horse.
Yeah, clever claim for sure. Well, since the claim, this was the 4th win with 5 starts, 4 wins, and a second place finish. Clever claim might be understating it.
Yeah, no, they're doing really well. And, I think her prior connections, Madison Myers, they gave the horse a little bit of time off from, late May to late July, which I think helped her, and then they put her in a spot. I suspect they were trying to see if they could maybe steal a March, win a race, and keep the horse, and they didn't. But she won that day. And so she's now won 5 out of her last 6 and run second the other time. So she's, she's really coming around now. And, we're talking about Brittany always being in the winner's circle. Jamie Ness and Jamie Rodriguez also always in the winner's circle in Maryland.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see where they go next with this one as a Maryland bred. So we'll keep our eyes on Charming Way. And finally, the John Campbell $100,000 mile and an eighth. I took a little pop with the veteran in here, Yodelei, who was coming off a win as an 8-year-old. Didn't get it done there, running last in the field of 8 at 8-1. Got the price I wanted, but didn't get the performance I wanted. It's going to be It's Sizzling Time, getting it done at 11-1. So those folks got their price as well. It's Sizzling Time, the number 6 horse, Double Crown 7, runs second at 6-1. And Be Better, the Brittany Russell Rapoli runner, at 2-1, runs third. Bob Marco, the 9, was the even money favorite. Disappoints running 4th in here, but it's an upset to kick off the stakes action. It's Sizzling Time in the John Campbell.
Yeah, this race, Bob Marco coming in had looked like, his last few races, he looked like the greatest horse of all time. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but, he was going like a mile and a 16th, and he'd go like 45-4 and not stop. And, so he had been running just crazy good races. I guess he found his level here, and it's not quite stakes company. I was on Double Crown in this spot, and, with leaving the furlong grounds, I thought, boy, I got the money here. And then Sizzling Time came up to get him. A really clever ride, I thought, from Gene Brasino, who kind of saved ground and slipped through inside. But this race, this ended up being my favorite story of the day, because this was the first stakes win for trainer Valerie Smith. She runs the barn with her husband Donovan Houghton, who used to be a trainer as well. And this is a horse that they bought this horse at auction for $1,000. And she said they looked at each other and said, what the heck? It's $1,000. Let's take a swing. So they buy the horse. This was the horse's 40th career start, first time in stakes company. And, so they've been super patient. The horse debuted for maiden 25, ran as cheap as 10,000 at one point, but it's been an all non-claiming company for about the last 2 years, and gradually worked through the allowance conditions, and then had run a big one last out, and then runs another big one here today to win. And talking to Valerie Smith afterwards, she's from Jamaica. She's been here for like 20 years, and she had the look of somebody. And I said to her, "You don't look so much excited as you look satisfied when a plan comes together." And she kind of said, "Well, I'm both, but yeah, this is we were kind of working towards this, so it's very exciting." So it was really as much as you're impressed with the Post Times of the world and seeing Jamie Nass and Brittany Russell win, I think it's the most fun when the connections like Valerie Smith, who has 4 horses, win the stake.
That is a great story, no question. Well, yeah, you look up at the top of the PPs, you see $1,000 paid. Then you look over a little bit to the right, and with yesterday's purse, over $250,000. That was a clever auction buy. Yeah, that's a great story. And folks can keep up with all the great stories at theracingbiz.com. Always like to tout the website covering action in the Mid-Atlantic. There we go. Thanks, Dan. Putting up, you see the web address there down at the bottom, theracingbiz.com. Check that out. And before we let you go, Frank, have to ask, we had you on a few weeks ago kind of updating us on the Maryland situation overall, Pimlico and Laurel, and what the future holds. Any updates there? Any news in the last few weeks?
Nothing. Nothing of real consequence. We're kind of waiting on legislation to be introduced. And I haven't checked in the last couple of days, but the Racetrack Operating Authority is going to need a bill to be able to do some of the things they want to do, in terms of moving money around and various other stuff. So kind of waiting to see what that looks like. But no, so right now it's kind of status quo, and even talking with people at the Stronach Group, there's a lot of like, not quite sure how this is all going to play. So stay tuned. It's going to be interesting.
It does seem like a whole stay tuned situation, and we all have our fingers crossed because Maryland racing has been so important to American racing for quite a while now. Frank, appreciate the visit. We'll talk again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Seth, and good luck today.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Frank Vespe. Again, check out theracingbiz.com for full coverage of racing in that Mid-Atlantic region. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Matt Dinerman. We'll check in and see how the first season at Oaklawn is going and more. All of that right after this. Stay tuned. There's no better place to enjoy horse racing action than the Capital OTB Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany, just minutes off of I-90. The Clubhouse Racebook features over 200 flat-screen TVs, bringing you racing action from across the country, plus all the major sporting events. Racing info, tip sheets, promotions and events, track odds, plenty of parking, and a full bar and restaurant. Stop by today. Capital OTB's Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany.
Gulfstream Park's championship meet brings world-class thoroughbred racing to South Florida each winter, and it's a prime reason to offer the best turf racing possible. Having the best surfaces is the key to offering a superior racing product. We are committed to attracting the world's best horses, trainers, and jockeys to run over our exceptional course. Gulfstream Park's new turf course will be unveiled this December.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Happy to be joined now by Matt Dinerman. You hear him in the booth down at Oaklawn, and prior to that out on the West Coast, and we'll get a little background from Matt. Matt, and I will start by apologizing. We were supposed to have you on last week, and people who watched the show, I think we're waiting for you, and I'm putting that on me because when people are in different time zones, I try to make it clear what time we're on, and I did a bad job of that last week, so I'm putting that on me, but I'm happy to have you on this week, and I've been saying, you've been in the back of my mind since the beginning of the meet. I said I want to get Matt on to talk a little bit about season number 1 down at Oaklawn, but I wanted to get into the meet a little bit so you had some experience, but happy to have you this morning. Matt, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Seth. Yeah, I guess we get to build the anticipation for this interview a little bit. But
I like that.
Everything's going just swell, and the meet's been fantastic. I mean, Oaklawn's as great as everybody says it is. We had 31,000 people just yesterday. It was 45 degrees, and there was a boatload of people. And that was just an average Saturday.
Yeah.
So it was party time in Hot Springs with the ponies. So it's been fantastic. I'm loving it here.
I have had a chance to visit Oaklawn, and I tout it to people all the time, really enjoy it. And just as a handicapper and a bettor, I love Oaklawn. I always think there's a lot of value there. I love playing it. It's one of my favorite tracks all year long. I'll get a little more into Oaklawn in a second, but for folks who maybe aren't familiar, the prior job was out at Golden Gate, and folks may have heard you out there. But give us a little background. How'd you get into the horse racing game in general, and what pulled you into the announcer's booth?
I grew up in San Diego, California, so an exit south of Del Mar, actually. So it wasn't too far away from the track, and luckily I was able to grow up in a home track that is so beautiful and prestigious and has top quality racing. But when I was a kid, my dad would take me to the track like a lot of people, and I was immediately just blown away by pretty much everything. The horses, the pageantry, the roar of the crowd as the horses came down the stretch, the excitement during a race, the jockeys, just everything. I was just taken aback, and I wanted to learn more about the game. Eventually, I wanted to work in the game. I started as a hot walker for trainer John Sadler, and worked my way up, and eventually I wanted to do TV. I really enjoyed handicapping races. Once I learned how to read the form from my dad, handicapping, that was something that was very interesting to me and a lot of fun. But I knew that being able to call races was so interesting. As a kid, I was always really asking all sorts of questions about how the announcers and the names and the length in between horses, and it just seemed like a really fun job that you could describe the action, be a good ambassador for the sport, and be able to watch all the races and be on track, which is something I love to do. So all of that had me saying, you know what, let's maybe try this rather oddball job.
And take us through where you've announced so far. As I say, you're at Oaklawn now, you were at Golden Gate before. Take us through the career path at this point.
So right out of college, literally a week or two before I graduated college, I got the job at Emerald Downs in Auburn, Washington, calling races. I was practicing calling races on the roof at Santa Anita and in the press box at Del Mar, where I worked for a couple of years up there with the writers and the media team and the front side staff at Del Mar. I received the job at Emerald after a live audition, and I was scared out of my mind to do it, but it was time, and I got it done, and they hired me to an astonishment of not only myself, but a lot of industry people. I think hiring somebody with as little experience on a mic as I had. So I was able to do that for 2.5 years at Emerald, which is a wonderful place to be in the spring and summer, Auburn, Washington. Called at Golden Gate Fields for 6 years. I was there 7. The first year I did the paddock, handicapped on air, and then I graduated to the announcer's booth, literally moved up to the roof for 6 years. And, you know, when Golden Gate Fields, they, of course, are closing in June. And once that was announced, the Oaklawn position was still available at the time. So I went ahead and applied for the job, signed myself up to at least be on the list of candidates. And here we are. Just a big blessing and just a lovely thing. Man, I'm very, very lucky to be here. And really, I'm lucky this whole career that I've had. I'm just 31 years old, and I've done a lot for my age. So I'm very proud, but also very lucky. And there have been a lot of people that have helped me along the way. So I've been very, very, very blessed and lucky.
Yeah, that's a great story. And, have heard similar story. Travis Stone had the tape recorder up on the roof at Saratoga. So I guess up on the roof practicing announcing is the step one on the career path for folks who maybe want to be a track announcer. But that is amazing that fresh out of college, you step into the booth at a racetrack. And a track I would love to visit, Emerald Downs. Obviously, it's on the other side of the country for me, but I'd love to visit that. And you mentioned Golden Gate. And I just want to get your feelings a little bit because I'm a guy, it's on the other side of the country. I don't play Golden Gate all the time, but I have to admit last week when I was reading the articles that said the last El Camino Real Derby, I was like, because you said it at the top. You said, how'd you get into the game? Your dad brought you to the track. I think the racetrack experience is important for developing new fans. So it's always sad when racetracks go to the sidelines.
It absolutely is. And in order to grow the game, you need to have racetracks around, and you need to be showing young people or just anybody really that are new prospects to this game, new customers. You need to grow the game by showing them the racetrack.
Yeah.
I always think it's pretty hard to really get a long-term customer just on television. Maybe in the long term you can play races and be at home if you want. You don't go on track off. At least to get people hooked to the game, you've got to bring them to the races. So there's that, but also just the fact that when you're closing a racetrack, sometimes I think it's forgotten just how many lives are affected. I mean, there have been people that have been in Northern California racing for decades and that really care about that track and put their heart and soul into it. And like I said, I was there for 6-7 years, and I went through the stages of loss myself because of just putting so much hard work and effort into that community and knowing that the track is going away. It's a very tough thing. It's very difficult.
Yeah, and that was, has for years been one of the important circuits in American racing. Northern California, Bay Meadows disappeared, now Golden Gate. Hopefully they can get something together with maybe some of these fair circuits, but certainly rooting for them. But it was sad to see that announcement, Golden Gate, and as I say last week, the last El Camino Real Derby. But let's talk a little happier circumstance. You've already alluded to it. And I said a few years ago, I have a sister who lives up in Fayetteville. So some years back, I was driving to Florida.
Okay.
I stopped, visited my sister in Fayetteville, and on the way to Florida, I spent a day down at Oaklawn. And as a guy up here, we're located up near Saratoga and broadcast from the backstretch through the entire meet, so we're tied into Saratoga, certainly. And Hot Springs to me is very similar. There's a very similar history, but as you kind of alluded to, and one of the fun things about Saratoga is you go out to dinner at night and people at the next table are talking about the double they hit that day and the horse they're looking at tomorrow. And so the whole town is into it. And I think Hot Springs is very much the same. Talk a little bit about your experience. Had you ever been to Hot Springs before? But just talk a little bit about the town and the Oaklawn experience.
I have only been to the state of Arkansas for the job interview for this job. So that was the only time I had been to Oaklawn before actually taking the next step to, yes, I have received the job and I'm going to live here for half the year. Oaklawn is very much like Saratoga in that respect. There's racing on TV. The town loves racing. People know how to read the form. They know how to handicap. They're constantly talking about the races. I remember I went and spoke at a Rotary Club, and the head of the Rotary Club was telling me about his pick 4 that he played the day before. It was on a Monday, and we were talking about the Sunday racing, and that would have never happened in a place like California, honestly. So I was like, holy smoke, this was after the first – I think it was after the first couple weeks. I mean, even yesterday I was at dinner with a buddy and 2 people came up to the table and shook my hand and so they enjoyed my work and we talked about the races a little bit. So you go around town, and especially if you're a horse person, if you're a trainer or a jockey or an on-air personality, people know who you are. And it's just great to see that type of excitement and energy in a town. It's almost like a throwback type of town. Hot Springs is a small town. if I compare it to California, for example, it's a lot more simple living. I've come to enjoy it. I like it. I like just relaxing. I'm a simple type of guy, but it's a place that people really, really enjoy racing, stand up for the racing community, and everybody's on board, essentially. The fans, the local politicians want to make sure that racing is doing well here. They know how much of an economic impact it has, not only in Hot Springs, but in the whole state of Arkansas. So it's very important that racing is doing well here, just like Saratoga and just like Lexington and Louisville and Kentucky.
Yeah, and that all sounds very familiar to me, going to the Rotary Club and having the guy mention the Pick 4, because I play some old man basketball a couple of times a week at the Y and in a middle school up here, and the folks who are playing know me from the handicapping shows in the afternoon, and they'll talk about, oh, hey, how about that race last weekend or whatnot, and I just don't think other parts of the country you'll get that kind of interaction, but up here at Saratoga, and again, it's very similar down there at Oaklawn. I want to talk a little bit nuts and bolts of the job down there, because I pulled up a shot I found on the internet that gives a good look. There are some trees in the infield at Oaklawn, but I get the sense that those are not obstructions. It seems like Oaklawn for a track announcer is probably a good gig. You got a good look at the entire track, correct?
It's a good sight line up there for sure. The hardest part actually is the finish line with the photo finishes, because I am a bit off the line. I'm ahead of the line probably by 10 yards. So that could really, really cause an issue given the angle. Yeah. At Golden Gate, I was right on the line, so I could be pretty bold. I'm pretty good at photo finish calls, I think, so I could be pretty bold with calling close photos at Golden Gate, but Oaklawn, I can't do it. I got to be much more careful because of the sight line there. But in terms of the trees, there's no obstruction there. You can see everything just fine. I know at Saratoga, they've got a lot of trees, and that can be very difficult for an announcer there. In this case, Frank Miramati. I'm sure he's experienced it. I know Tom Durkin experienced it. I've talked to Larry Colmus about it, how the trees at Saratoga, sometimes it's hard to see that far turn run. But the sight lines here at Oaklawn are, besides the line where you're a little bit off, it's very, very good. And it's one of the best views in the house.
And tough to call a photo finish is a great segue, because as I was sitting in doing the afternoon show yesterday, knowing you were coming on, I had to pull up the stretch run to yesterday's 6th race, because you noted it in the call. Cozy My Boy, and it was just an average race, but this is so much fun, and with 30,000 in the house, I'm sure it was a great reaction too. Cozy My Boy, as we watched the stretch run, he's going to be behind a wall of horses here. He's there in the red trying to split horses and can't find room, goes down to the rail, and he's totally up against it. And as we'll see watching the stretch run here, he gets up. You make the perfect call. You say, if he gets up, this was just kind of an amazing performance. And sure enough, when the photo finish was developed, Cozy My Boy got it done. And as I say, just an average race on a Saturday afternoon, but that is fun for the fans, and that kind of performance has to be fun for you as an announcer as well.
Oh, for sure. And when you're calling races, you want exciting things happening. It's harder when there's not as much going on out there. So to be able to describe the action is a lot of fun, and hopefully you can bring some positive energy towards the fans, and that can radiate with them. And the good news is here at Oaklawn, they don't need me to help bring up the vibe. They've got plenty good vibes as it is with all the fans here. But definitely when the photo finish sign was posted, there was oohing and eyeing. When they posted that he had gotten up, there was a giant roar. Probably some groans as well, some people who didn't have the horse. But that was probably... he would be the trip play of the meet so far if he didn't get up and ran back at that condition. Let's put it that way. I mean, he had a horrendous trip. Yeah, he still won. Very, very game.
You labeled it perfectly. If he wins this, he was much, much the best. And I noted it on the show yesterday, too, when we came out of that race. I was like, that was incredible. And watching live, I thought, I think he got it. And then the slow-mo replay, I thought, nah, I don't think he did. But then when the photo was developed, it was just an absolutely fun race. And just before we get a couple ideas for this afternoon, I wanted to look at another fun race from Oaklawn. going back a couple of weeks, the Southwest, and just get your thoughts on Mystic Dan, who on a day where there were a number of 3-year-old races across the country, on the number, this was one of the better performances. Mystic Dan, the Ken McPeak runner, will score in the Southwest, the number 10 horse here, as we see, and does it pretty easily and gets a 101 buyer. Now on the day, Nysos probably was more impressive, and I say that because Nysos had already kind of proven himself, whereas the resume for Mystic Dan wasn't quite as impressive. So I'm going to be really excited to see Mystic Dan and what he can do on the comeback, but this was impressive in the Southwest. What were your impressions?
Well, this horse had gotten a 96 buyer, Mystic Dan, breaking his maiden on a fast track sprinting. So we knew, well, you've got something in the tank.
Yeah.
You can't run like that unless you've got some raw talent. And then his first start off a bit of a break. He was routing. He had a light work pattern. He dueled on the lead, got a little bit tired in the Smarty Jones. So the question going into the Southwest is, well, is this horse able to go longer, or is he just one of these sprinter types? And obviously he proved the distance wasn't a problem, at least in the mud, but I was very impressed. I thought he got a great trip. At 3/8 pull, I remember calling him in 5th. He was on the rail about 3 lengths behind, and he was going nice and easy. And I remember just thinking, wow, this horse is getting a really good trip. He's good enough. He could win this race. And I think he's a price. And sure enough, he was, and he came right up the rail. But the way he finished, it was very much reminiscent of Mind That Bird when he won the Derby. Just came right up the rail in the slop and drew off and basically won going away and was wrapped up in the end. That's what it looked like. Very much a carbon copy of that type of trip and that type of run in the final quarter mile. I was very impressed with it. Obviously, you have to wonder, is this horse able to duplicate these great performances? I mean, if he can run like that, he's going to have no problem in Grade 1 company, against some of the better horses in the division. But that's the question mark, and hopefully we get a fast track on Arkansas Derby Day to see that. The Rebel entries are being taken today. We're expecting anywhere, I would say, from 10 to 14 horses the very max, and he will not be running. 3-week turnaround, he's going to train into the Arkansas Derby, which is a very logical move. So I was impressed with the run, but the question is, can he put back-to-back together? I think he could probably run good races on a fast track. We saw it at Churchill Downs, but that was sprinting. So there's some questions there, but he's got some quality, obviously.
I will say, as you were talking, I was just looking it up because I had it on my computer. On the future pool, he's sitting at this weekend's future pool. He's sitting at 27-1. I might take a pop at that.
Yeah, especially knowing Nysos isn't running in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now it's a lot more wide open in that. 27-1 is a steal, especially if he comes back and runs well in the Arkansas Derby. Then you're going to be a pretty happy camper, I would imagine.
Yeah, I always say I'm looking in these future pools, I'm looking for about 30-1, and we're in that neighborhood, so I might have to take a look at that one before the afternoon ends. All right, Matt, before we let you go, I asked you to take, speaking of that, I asked you to take a look at a couple races, and you said you like handicapping, you like doing the TV side of things. And I pulled up I did a screen cap last week because you sit in and do the pregame show down at Oaklawn with Crystal Conning and our friend Nancy Holthus. And I pulled up a shot from last week, and I'm sitting in here doing the afternoon handicapping show, and on my monitor up on the wall, I have a quad screen of 4 tracks, and Oaklawn was one of them, but I didn't have the sound. And I looked up, and I thought it was Obi-Wan Kenobi Day. You guys were all wearing the robes, and here we have the still shot here, and I had to pull up the sound. And as it turns out, I guess your spa down there, the casino spa, got some kind of award. So they're spa robes. But I literally thought, oh, this is like a Star Wars tribute. But you only do Saturdays on the pregame show, correct?
I'm on Saturdays, yes, and then Nancy and Crystal have the seat Friday and Sunday with one another. But Monday, tomorrow, we've got special live racing, and I'll be doing
nice.
Essentially every other day I'm on. So when we go to 4 days a week, I'll do Thursday and Saturday as well.
Nice, because you do a good job. As I say, I'm in here, and I'm watching a lot of the pregame shows from the various tracks, and I enjoy the work you guys do down at Oaklawn. But let's let you fire up a couple for today. 6th race this afternoon. $100,000 maiden claimer. Let's see if anybody gets picked out of this one. Mile and a 16th, the Trip. I handicapped for Oaklawn for this afternoon as well for our handicapping show. I took a little shot with PJ Song at 20-1. Lindsey Schultz, an up-and-coming trainer I've been talking about here for maybe a month and a half or a couple of months. Practical joke, an interesting win early sire. So I have the 5 on top. I thought the 9, the 7, the 2 were interesting. What did you see in race number 6 today?
Well, I'm going to give you 2 picks today, as you know, Seth, and the viewers and listeners, but I'm giving you both prices. And I don't want to come on here and give you a chalk. I want to give you some value. And I like that you're going with a long shot in PJ Song. I'm going with a price not nearly as high, but Brilliant Man, number 8 in this race, has been running in the Kentucky circuit, takes 2 months off, moves from the barn of Eric Reed to trainer Chris Hartman, and Chris does fantastic when he takes horses and is able to improve many of them. In fact, the numbers indicate that. He's 26% from a 77-horse sample. First start for his barn when a horse moves to him. Coming out of a big special weight race at Turf went on the synthetic, didn't do much. It was a price. He also was on synthetic. But his 2 back games on the setup. For a maiden $100,000 race, these horses are quite a bit of a drop off from our maiden special weight horses here. So this sort of plays more like a maiden 50 claimer than it does a maiden 100 claimer, and that's why I picked Brilliant Man on the barn switch, being that this horse can run to his very best, and he's facing a field that isn't quite as strong as he's seen as of late.
Well, now I'm going to have to toss it into the exacta box. I had some check marks, and I like Chris Hartman's work down there, so I did have a couple of notes next to that one. But I'll throw in, because if my 20-1 comes in with your 8-1, I don't want to be sitting on the sideline, so I'll toss that one in. 8th race this afternoon, allowance non-winners of 1 other than 1 mile the trip. I went with Bow Draw on the outside. I thought the last race on the move to the return to Oaklawn in a similar race was okay. I don't have super confidence there. Malibu Smart's interesting. Xylophone for me. At the 11, also I thought Twin Mischief could be a player for Asmussen, but does have to overcome that outside post position. What did you see in the 8th today?
Yeah, this is our feature race today, an allowance race. I'm taking a price here as well. I think there's a lot of speed in this race. So I'm going to go with a price, a runner that the last time we saw her routing, she won. It was on the turf at Indiana. Little Sister Sue, number 2. Now, her 2 back efforts sprinting at this level, she ran a really good race. Ran second, got a good speed figure, came back, ran poorly. But the thing is, she came back in just about 3 weeks, and she bounced big time last time out, big time bounce. So she freshens up after that run. Gets to the route game here. Yes, it says she's 0 for 1 at the distance, but that's on dirt. Again, she won routing on the grass, and there's a lot of pace in here, and I think this race could set up for very much an off-the-pace horse. You look at her last few races, she's been off the pace in sprints, very much off the pace. In the route races, she can be at least a little closer, 2, 3, 4 lengths behind. So Little Sister Sue for me is going to be the pick number 2 for Gennaro Garcia, who, by the way, is a very cagey trainer, and he pops at prices. And I think this one could be one of his price horses here. Racing.
I like it. Matt, appreciate the visit. Appreciate you taking the time and talking a little bit about the inaugural season down at Oaklawn. Again, we're watching in the afternoon. You're doing a great job down there. But as I say, appreciate the visit. Keep up the good work. Say hi to Nancy for us a little bit later today, and we will talk again in the future.
Thanks so much for having me, Seth. Have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate it. Matt Dinerman from the announcer's booth down at Oaklawn. Again, doing a great job season 1 down there. Also, a little bit earlier, Fran Vespe covering some of that stakes action yesterday at Laurel, and our recap of the really nice day. There's some horses certainly to watch going forward. You know, we'll have to decide next race for some of those fairgrounds horses because of the track condition yesterday, but track condition or no, we saw some performances that will play going forward. And the Chad Brown runner, certainly Sierra Leone, worth. And I thought intricate again with the second place finish off the layoff. I thought Brendan Walsh, he's okay going on to the Kentucky Oaks with her as well. Tarifa, obviously, the winner also. All right, I am going to wrap it up for this edition of Racing Across America. Do want to remind you once again, mandatory pay in the Pick 6 out of Golden Gate today. So if you're a Pick 6 player, you might want to take a look at that. Kentucky Derby Future Pool will wrap up at 6 o'clock. And again, if you go down the list, I mentioned Mystic Dan, who looks a little bit interesting, but there are plenty of others who are playable as well. And at 5-1, we will see, because all others tends to get hit late. So I'm tending to think that 5-1 is going to wind up to be a little bit generous by the time 6 o'clock rolls around on all others. But, as you get later on the calendar, all others is less attractive, particularly now with the 39 individual entrants, as opposed to going back a couple of years where there was a much smaller pool of players. But I still think, particularly in this day and age where a lot of horses are getting later starts, I still think you pick up all others here in the middle, towards the end of February. You're going to wind up with some starters in the starting gate that will have shown some ability, obviously, to get into the gate and not have been on this list. So all others to me intriguing. But the future pool closes at 6 o'clock today. Keep that in mind. And again, a little bit later on, Sunland Park will have the Sunland Derby, the Sunland Oaks. They have some other stakes on the undercard as well. But there are some interesting runners in both the Sunland Oaks and certainly the Sunland Derby coming up again, as I say, a little bit later on today from Sunland Park. I will be back a little bit later on, probably about an hour or so, with OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon. I'm just looking. Our post time at Aqueduct is 12:50. We're 12:10 at Gulfstream. That may mean before the first race at Gulfstream, we may be showing the pregame from Aqueduct, so I might not jump in until a little bit later after the Gulfstream card has started. But about an hour or so, we'll be back for OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon. And as noted, I also handicapped Oaklawn for this afternoon. So should be a fun Sunday. And Matt mentioned it as well. But I'll remind you that tomorrow, of course, is President's Day. New York racing in the mix, Oaklawn in the mix tomorrow. So some of the tracks you wouldn't normally see on a Monday will be fired up and rolling for tomorrow. Keep that in mind as well. Otherwise, Seth Merrow for Racing Across America on this Sunday morning. Thanks for joining us. And again, back in a little bit more than probably an hour or so for OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon. So we'll see you then. We'd like to thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park, the championship meet, running now through Florida Derby weekend, March 31st.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.